Welcome back to the Better Than Best Academy, where we have inspiring conversations with extraordinary people. We want to give you the tools and the lessons that you need to fulfill your purpose while making a positive impact on the world. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Today's guest is nothing short of extraordinary and creative. He's a singer songwriter for the soul, a social worker, tennis coach, and former park ranger. His name is Zach Lane, aka Dr. Duck Music. Now, Zach, I hear you also are into investing in a good pair of shoes. I too love shoes, so I'm curious, what is your most favorite pair of shoes you have?
Red, it's so nice to meet you. Great question. I have a pretty strict answer on this. So, being a park ranger and a former runner, well, kind of runner, I gotta give it to Hocus. I gotta give it to
Okay.
Hocus.
All
Yep.
right.
I'm on my feet a lot. So the cushion there, perfect. It's perfect. I have the Hoka ring cones and they're great for running. I wear them at the gym too. Just walking around, they're versatile. They're perfect. Really appreciate a good pair of shoes because guess what? You don't want red. Your feet hurting at the end of the day.
Oh,
Bad news.
seriously, man, that's I know I've had some shoes, I really love the aesthetic of them, but they've been so uncomfortable, and one thing that I've learned the older I get is how important comfort is and having a great pair of shoes that are comfortable, but also look nice. And I love to hear another shoe connoisseur. Since we've just met, obviously, literally just met, I think
Okay.
it's so cool that we just dive right in. But most of my audience will be meeting you for the first time. So I love to start my conversations with asking this question. So, who is Dr. Duck? Who is Zach Lane?
Oh my gosh. All right. Dr. Duck is somebody who cares a lot about people. Um, Someone who's been trying to figure out life for many, many years, trying to do many, many different things just to find something that feels purposeful, feels meaningful, feels important, and feels fulfilling above all else. And I realized that I don't really think one particular thing makes me feel that. I love so many different kinds of things. I love meeting different kinds of people from all different walks of life. And that and enjoying all the different aspects of life is what makes me tick. So I'm somebody who's well-rounded. Relatively well-rounded, at least at trying things. But at the end of the day, I'm somebody that wants to make the world just a little bit better than how I came in. Boils down to that.
I'm curious, what inspired you to get into all that you do?
Raging ADHD.
Oh, man.
So I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was probably, I think, 5. It was very apparent. And anyone who knows me when I was a kid will tell you that something was a little bit off. I was flying off the walls. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't really listen. I had a very hard time socially just because I was so amped up all the time. And so something with people with ADHD is oftentimes we blow through hobbies really fast because we're so excited to try something new and we're kind of chasing that dopamine. Once that period of trying something new ends, it's like, oh, what's that over there? And then on to whatever the next thing is. So I've racked up quite a few hobbies, quite a few different career paths, but I've kind of been on this hunt since I was a little kid to find something that really was going to make it past those 6 months. And connecting with people through making art has been the thing that's been the through line through. I didn't really start putting out my own music until this year. I was really self-conscious and didn't really think that what I had to offer was good enough. It's very easy to compare yourself to everybody else around you
Yeah.
constantly. And I don't know if you can relate, but like there's this certain threshold that you feel like you have to meet or
Oh,
else
yeah.
I can't even bother to try. Right.
Yeah.
And I was bogged down by that for years. So one day I was, I was just having a hard time for years, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling like anything I was really doing was good enough and getting sick of the flip flopping. And I said, you know what? Let me stick to this. It's something that I've always loved to do. Let me push myself and take all this energy and all this creative juice I have and just bet on myself. And it was super uncomfortable because betting on myself was not something I was used to doing. And I can't even tell you how wonderful it's been. The highs, the lows, everything. I've been able to handle the criticism. I've been able to handle the highs. I've been able to find myself really through creating music and creating art. And so I guess that's how I kind of get into everything, but then kind of more so focused on creating things. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. I
Eh,
think there's a few things in particular that really stood out. Like you said, it's that threshold barrier of entry. I know I can agree. Like I worked for a very polished YouTube channel for 4 years. And that was right when I started making my own podcast and content. And I was exposed to really excellent 3 camera setup. There was a studio, teleprompter. Like we even at one point we were on TV. So I was editing a broadcast that was on TV. But I say all that to say, like, for me to get started in the video space, it was super, like, scary because I was like, "I wanna produce on a level there." But then I had to realize at some point, they didn't get there overnight, like, she had been a
Yep.
part of this and doing this forever. So the key is to just getting started, and I'll say it over and over again on my show, but, like, for those listening at home, like, it's just getting started, but I'd love for you to kinda dive a little bit deeper in what was that shift for you that you were finally like, "You know what? I'm just gonna go for it."
Yeah. First of all, I totally agree with you. I think that it's the hardest part, but once you take that initial leap, things just start to work out. I always like to use the analogy of like a ladder. You know what I mean? And you cannot. It's physically impossible to climb up 2 stories by just jumping. And if you try to do it like that, you're never going to do it because you'll be like, this is stupid. There's no way I can get up there. I'm going to go back inside and have a sandwich and avoid the thing that I want to do, which is
Here's
up there. But like, if you just take it, I'm a firm believer in chunking things, right? Like you just have to take things one chunk at a time and work
love
yourself
that.
up. And yeah, exactly. And like, it's kind of like a video game too. Like there are safe points along the way. Like, and guess what? You fall off. Sometimes you might have to start farther back, but you'll have a more clear path about how to do it the next time and you'll get better and better and better.
Yeah.
And once you enter into that, threshold, things start taking care of themselves. It's still going to be challenging and you for sure will have your ups and downs, but right.
Yeah.
But it's something that you're going to be able to handle. I think a lot of people think they can't handle it, but they can. I think the point for me when I realized that I had to do it was when I've kind of gone back and forth a lot, right? I was in my many career paths, I kind of passed the entry point, got relatively good at like an intermediate level, and then went, I plateaued and then quit. And so I kept doing that over and over again with pretty much everything that I did in my life. And I was sick of it. I was sick of it. I was sick of giving up. I gave up so much. I didn't trust myself really. And it wasn't until I sat down and I took an honest look at myself and said, you are not doing what you're capable of.
Mm.
You are not doing what you're capable of. Try. Just try. And that flipped the switch. I realized that without creating, I kind of just stifle everything and everything just kind of we get kind of pushed down and then slowly builds up and up and up. And I realized that creating for me is really the only way to be able to release and express a lot of those things. So it was almost like a big pressure cooker. And I think I was actually out for a run one day and I was running and oftentimes I run without music or without anything just so I can think through things. It's kind of my time to process things. And I just remember going, I'm never going to be happy if I don't do this, if I don't make an effort to do this. Okay. And I went home, I opened up Logic, which is like a affirmating music. And I went, okay, I guess we'll figure this out. So like everything else, it's been a process and it's been a huge learning curve. I am by no means a professional in anything that I do. But that's the beauty of it. There's so much fun stuff to learn. I spend so much time on YouTube just watching other people, and learning from them, doing my own stuff. And man, it's just so much better. It's so much better. I don't feel like I'm constantly avoiding what I'm supposed to do anymore. And taking those highs and lows is so much easier than just not trying to climb the ladder at all.
That's so cool. I love that. I love that
Thank
story.
you.
One thing in particular I love is you're open about the fact you're not an expert. And I believe And I believe it's so important for us to always have that mentality, no matter how long we've been doing this. It's like there's always something to learn. And like that's even the whole premise of my show. My show is called Better Than Best. For if you haven't got a chance to see it, but it's that idea of like we're never going to reach a peak. We're never going to reach our best. We can always get better daily. But man, I love that. So I'm curious, what has been the most rewarding part of this whole creative journey for you so far?
Red, you asked some good questions, my friend. The most rewarding part. I feel like there are multiple answers depending on what angle I come from. I think the most rewarding part for me personally has been this incredible release and a simultaneous confidence boost for me. I think if you're not actively trying to do something, oftentimes you're listening to doubt,
Yeah,
and those voices are sinister because they will tell you, yeah, you probably shouldn't do this. Stay on the couch. And you're like, okay, and you listen. Those voices have kind of faded away. I, 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 it's sometimes the anticipation building up to it's worse than the actual thing itself. Oftentimes, especially anyone that has anxiety might, that's probably something that they're working on, right? Is the build up and that stress and that pressure and the tightness is usually worse than the actual thing itself. Um, and that's been the case for this. So I think the release creatively has been so important for me. Also, just my body feels better.
mm,
My body feels better. The body keeps the score.
yeah,
Wonderful, wonderful book about trauma and how it sticks in our body.
yeah,
And I guess doing a lot of this creative work has allowed me to, in other ways, kind of, I'd say spiritually, physically, release some of that stress that's just been in my body for years. So it has that benefit. Another benefit that it's had that came to mind when you asked that question was the people.
yeah,
I love people. I get to meet awesome people like you and do cool podcasts where musicians, artists,
yeah,
and there's this beautiful sense of community, especially amongst creative people. There are some stinkers out there, but we root those out. Some people aren't in it for the right,
for sure.
I shouldn't say right reasons. Everybody has a different reason, right? Some people want to make a lot of money. Okay.
Yeah,
Some people want to make art that's going to last longer than their body will be around for.
for sure.
And that's kind of me. And they live and bleed and, that's their life. And I've been meeting so many people like that online just by putting myself out there, finding other people's music and being like, that's awesome. I want to lift you up because holy moly, more people need this message. Um, so yeah, I think it's done so many wonderful things for me.
S I also like to ask the flip. There's so many questions I have for you, but I think I also wanna ask the flip side of what's been the biggest struggle, the hardest part of this whole journey so far for you?
Mm, I was going to say the start of the journey is the hardest part, but I think the hardest part is this is a weird answer, but the success.
Yeah,
Like, and relatively speaking, I mean, there are people, I'm a super duper small artist, but because of this clip that blew up now, there's a feeling creeping in that I've kind of been more aware of lately, which is like, oh, now people might expect something from me,
yeah,
and I really tried all that I create to just focus on what I want to do, my creative energy, what I want to say, my voice. But now that like, and that's easy to do when you're putting out music for 80 people to listen to, and your mom's like,
right.
that's playing, or whatever. But now, and not to say that I'm some bit, my head's still in the
Yeah,
room, don't worry, you know, but relatively for where I'm coming from in the time that I've been doing this, for me, this is huge. And even just a couple people, it's hard sometimes to not taint the work that you're doing and what
yeah,
you need to get out with the other people's voices. I've had other people, like, oh, look, it'd be awesome if you did this, this, this. And my inner people pleaser wants to go, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on. So I honestly think staying in your own lane, staying true to your values And being okay with saying no when you don't want to do something or you don't feel something is right is probably one of the hardest parts about being in this space.
That's so good. I love that you mentioned the success because a lot of people wouldn't expect that. But I believe that sometimes the more successful we get, the lonelier we can be because you get into the space of the higher you climb, the smaller it gets. And it's like you're in this space of like you can be on an island by yourself, but ultimately you turn into pleasing people because everyone all of a sudden wants something from you and they want a certain you. Like I heard a famous rapper and he was on a podcast and he was explaining how he's been doing this for 20 years and
Mm.
people are still wanting the 19-year-old guy that started when he's like, I've grown, I've had a family, and it's like I'm so much more than that. And a lot of people can't accept that. So one thing that I'd love to ask you as a follow-up is what is like how are you combating that success monster, as you could say, that need to people please even? Like, what are you doing to combat that and staying true to yourself and your voice?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I've been a people pleaser my whole stinking life. It has gotten me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty common trait amongst, like I I'm gonna put us up on a pedestal here. Emotionally sensitive and inclined, guys. I
Yeah.
think I think we get in tricky situations because we kind of look over here and we see the so I don't care about anyone's feelings. Well, I don't want to be that. So let me drop all the way on the other end and let me be your doormat. And then that
Yeah.
doesn't work either. And you're like, geez. Um, but I think there are a lot of guys like us that definitely don't want to be on that end of the spectrum. I'd say this is a made up thing, but like the nice guy syndrome.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between being nice and being honest,
Exactly.
which, you can't be afraid to let people get mad at you.
For
You
sure.
can't be afraid to let people get mad at you. So how am I working on it? Therapy, journaling. There's this thing called not exposure therapy, rejection therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit buzzy now because people are posting about it on TikTok
Right.
and stuff. But really what it is getting used to getting you used to people saying
Yeah.
no or getting upset, not upset with you, but like rejecting you really. And it's a way to kind of get yourself used to that feeling of maybe letting somebody down or at least feeling like you are if you don't say yes. So I've been practicing that a little bit, but I think just overall, I look at it like this, and I journaled about this the other night. It's a good thing if some people don't like you because their values,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, because some people's values are, I don't want to be too judgmental here, but not maybe, not maybe beneficial to be around. I think we maybe all know somebody you're like, it's really how you live your life, and whatever, they can do whatever they want. But I think when you're a people pleaser, sometimes it's very easy to get sucked into, trying to, you kind of see that person. You're like, oh, I'm going to make you happy. I'm going to please you. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm going to take all your energy and use it. It's like the final people pleaser boss in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember that sometimes it's good that people don't like you. And that means you're doing something right. Because if you let everybody like you, you're compromising some of your values.
Oh, so good. And it makes me think of that line from the musical Hamilton, where he's like, talk less, smile more, don't let them know what you're against or what you're for.
Like your prefer- Oh yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's like, but there's like you devalue your life and your whole all of yourself when you do that. And it's so like, so what if you become polarizing? I feel like if you're going to make a difference and make an impact, you have to stand firm in it. And another thing is you said there's a difference in what was it, telling the truth and being kind or the honesty and being nice guy.
Yeah. There's a
I,
difference as being nice and being honest.
yes. So good.
Yeah.
And I like to try to put it this way, even for the clients that I talk to, I tell them that I'm going to tell them the kind truth because it's not nice, but it's packaged in a way from love, in a way of I really want to help you. But sometimes honesty and the truth hurts. It's a hard pill to swallow. But man, dude, that's so good. But you mentioned journaling. So I want to ask you, what has journaling done for your creativity and your mental health?
Oh, gosh. Friends listening to this, if you don't journal, it's probably the number one thing I'd start. And I know this is like a thing that, it's almost like, oh, eat, sleep, get more exercise, eat better and journal. It's kind of tacked onto that list of basic things. I got to tell you, being someone who never really had good routines, I journal now. I started at 5 minutes. I've worked up to about 15 minutes a night. I think that has had that and sleep have had the most meaningful impact on not only my creative life, but just physically. It is so beautiful to sit down at the end of the day and instead of just going right to bed, processing what happened during that day or that week or a feeling that you're going to bed with or how you felt about your friend when they said this or, why in the world did I feel this way?
Hey, I just wanted to pause here and give you the opportunity to either apply to be a guest on this show or give you the opportunity to work with me as your coach. To do that, you will find either of those links in the description that'll say either be a guest on the show or book a free 30-minute Zoom discovery call. Each path will get you headed towards living your most creative and fulfilled life as you learn to live better than best. All right, now back to today's conversation.
Or even just creating something. I use a really cool thing. It's prompts and it'll prompt you, you know, right about a time when you felt like you were on top of the world. Oh my gosh, it's just a beautiful way to engage that your memory, beautiful way to work your brain muscles a little bit and get some stuff out at the end of the day. So that I think I'd say at least try it. An alternative to journaling, if you don't like to write stuff down, some people are more on the go. I do a thing called car talks. I put my phone up, I turn on the recorder, and I
Oh,
just talk to
dude, I
myself.
love that.
Yeah, oh, it's great. You say things and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I was feeling that. And I think for guys, especially, a lot of the times and I was for years, we are out of tune with what we're feeling.
Oh,
I think,
100%.
yeah. And I think, I don't want to blame society too much because I think there's absolutely a societal piece, but I also think there's a personal, accountability piece. And those two
Yeah.
things kind of, some people think it's more one side or the other, but regardless of what you think, I know that a lot of guys, for whatever reason, either by necessity or by choice, because it's easier in the moment, is in.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, over time, that catches up with you in weird
So much.
ways, weird way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in ways that
For
maybe you
sure.
wouldn't even expect. But yeah,
Dude, I love that. And I love that perspective. And you listening, watching at home, like you said, friend, get into journaling, get into car talks, even. Find a way to self reflect and process your emotions, especially you men listening. Because I mean, there's such a freedom on the other side of being real and honest with yourself. And even just being honest with those that you're close with or maybe not close with. Like I always love to say, like vulnerability is our super strength. It's our
right.
superpower and there's so much freedom on the other side of that, man, that's so good. Now, I definitely wanna ask you a bit about is it you have a new single, Pining? Am I saying it right? Oh,
You
dude,
got it right.
you've made some solid content around it. Like, first off, the little bit that I've heard is gold. I can't wait to hear the whole song and you listening, watching at home. Definitely, we're gonna put your links so people can find it and listen to it.
Mhm.
But I what you mentioned on a lyric breakdown video is one I saw. I think that's so cool you're doing lyric
Oh yeah,
breakdowns because former rapper, love wordplay, love the double entendres, all that stuff. Like
yeah.
I can nerd out really quick. One thing you mentioned though was that you were reflecting on healing your inner child. And I want to
Yeah.
ask, how do you think healing your inner child is reflected in your art that you create now?
Yeah, I think that's a central theme in everything I create. I think I don't view it as making up for lost time, but I'm kind of starting from the beginning, which is when I was a kid. And first of all, thank you. And I know I'm so curious. Do you have a favorite artist? Because I know you're an artist as well. Once an artist, always an artist. I say.
Favorite artist, man, there's
Yeah.
so many great it's hard to really pin a favorite. Well, I'll say it this way, when I was young and I was, like, first starting rapping, for me, it was Lil Wayne, and Drake's, the Eminems, because of the wordplay, because of
Oh.
the fact he could rhyme every syllable of a sentence with another sentence that was Eminem. And then later on, of course, I love the genius that Kanye has in music. And then Chance the Rapper has been a big guy for me that I
Yeah.
enjoy. But man, there's so many artists in so many different spaces. I could go on, but that's just a few
I,
that I can think of
oh,
offhand.
I could too. I could too. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We'll nerd out into this.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think so. I'm so sorry. You asked about like my writing style, my creative style, the double entendres and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was partially that, and then of course you were talking about how your inner child healing has been part of your journey. But I'd
That's
love
right.
if you just take a few minutes and kind of explain the new song for us. I know you
Yeah.
already kind of have, but I want to give you the opportunity to share about this pining and kind of where it came from. Yeah, the kind of the process of it.
Yeah. So I would love to say that I have a concrete way that I write songs, but I really don't. I think through this open reflection and through this journaling and just hopping on good routine, sleeping more, exercising more, trying to eat better, trying stuff just kind of come like your brain's in better shape. And that has allowed me to kind of process all these years of kind of boop, and everything is just flying out of me now. So I think a lot of the theme, I'm a school social worker as well. So I work with children. I teach them coping skills. I teach them how to handle their anxiety, their depression. And it's mostly kids with some sort of developmental disability. So either like an autism or an intellectual disability,
Right.
something like that. And so I've been kind of parallel working on a lot of these skills myself while also teaching and helping, other people do the same thing. And so there's this thing where it's like I'm working with kids to do this stuff and I can't help but go back and think back to like, wow, when I was a kid, I was in a very similar boat in the sense that I struggled a lot with this kind of stuff, especially come high school. And so I think a lot of my art now is kind of like really a reach back in time. And the inner child work kind of goes like this. I think a lot of people tend to run away from who they used to be or who they might be ashamed that they were. There's this wonderful documentary called Stutz, and that was really what inspired the song. I think he's a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, and he works with a bunch of different people, but he works with um, Jonah Hill is one of his
Okay.
clients, and Jonah Hill wanted to make a movie about him and about his process. He's really funny. Some therapists nowadays have this kind of like, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to listen to you, and you're going to tell me, I'm going to go, yeah, yeah. So how did that make you feel, right? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And there's some people love that. Some people need that.
Mhm.
Not Stutz. He's a much more active, his big quote is, you get advice from your friends and you pay your therapist to listen to you. It's completely backwards. You should get advice from your therapist and your friends should listen to you. What do they know? Which I
Yeah.
think is really funny. But yeah, but one of his concepts that he says is reconnecting with what's called the shadow. The shadow is this past version of yourself that you're deeply ashamed of or wishing nobody would see. You're kind of afraid of it, almost hiding it from everybody because you don't want anyone else to see. And in the documentary, Jonah Hill took out a picture of him. I think he had mentioned the comment like when he was at his heaviest, when he was, trying to be somebody that I felt like he wasn't. He's like, I'm ashamed of that guy.
Wow.
And I've been running from him from years. And so the shadow work, healing your inner child, is taking those two different entities, the younger version of yourself and the older version of yourself. And instead of running away,
Yeah.
coming together.
Oh,
And
man.
I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that is super me. And that just hit me like a bus. And I was like, I have to write something about that. So I created my own journal prompt, which was something along the lines of, if you could go talk to your inner child, what would you want to say? Everything just came out. And I took my journal, I went to my computer and then I wrote the song. It took for the lyrics, about 2 days, but most of the work was done in the journal. It all came from the journal. So the concept, the story of the song is kind of detailing can I say bad words?
Yeah. Yeah. You're
My
good.
shit as a child
Yeah.
and all the crap that I went through and really reconciling with that version of myself. So the song is called Pining because it's kind of like this deep, deep desire pushing through mental health, pushing through, that big gap between us and longing for each other to reconnect again. So that's pretty much the big theme of the song. But another theme of the song, and I talk about this openly now, and kind of, I don't know, I always feel like I should be getting more emotional when I talk about this. Like that's the typical thing, but I'm not. Like I've processed this. It feels like now that I've done a lot of this work, it feels okay. When I was deeply unhappy as a child and I was on a lot of different medications for different things and I just felt out of my body. And so mentioned in the song is the exact time when this, I guess I refer to it as like the split happened, when my younger self stayed behind and the shame and embarrassment of, of that moment made my older self for like detach from this part and leave. And that was when I was standing on an overpass on a mission trip. The line from the song is, "Oh, nearly ended it on a mission trip. The irony was lost on me until I read my script." I could help everybody else. I was so good, and people pleasers know this. They're so good at helping everybody else, but they can't help themselves. And that hit me on that trip. I think I was 13 years old, and I was so devastated by it that I tried to kill myself by jumping off that overpass. And in that moment, I think a piece of me left and stayed there. So in order to reconnect with him, the cover art for Pining is me playing soccer when I was a young kid. It was one of my happiest memories I have, running down the field. And I remember the picture being taken. I had a big smile on my face. And so to kind of help reconnect, I've been starting there, starting with those happier moments, going back in time and healing from there and on. And I forgive that person. I forgive that version of myself because he didn't have the tools. And I think that, people make whatever decision they think is going to be the best for them in the moment. And I forgive that guy, and he's back in me now, and we're kind of going through this process together. And so the song is really for him, and it's for everybody's inner child out there that they have kind of turned their back on. And what I wanted to do with the song was really heal myself, but also all my music. I want to heal other people because I know that there's a lot of people like me, especially guys that again, keep all that down. And we talked about success before, right?
Yeah.
When we wrote that song, when I wrote that song, but I had some wonderful help. I'm going to shout out my wonderful, wonderful producer and engineer, Pace Farrell, and also Julian Sherwood, who rocked all pretty much every instrument that you hear on there, except for the piano. Actually, I think he played piano too. These two guys, we created this thing and we kind of stepped back and we went, oh, this, I think this could be something. Not to say I haven't felt that way with my other music, but to be in a room with two other guys and for them to allow me the space to be able to talk about this stuff and, just yell at the end of the song. I mean, it really wasn't singing. It was just me. That was pretty much the first take. And I said, I'm just going to yell this
I
and see
love
what
it.
happens. And I was just, oh, and it was just really me just trying to communicate as directly as possible. Let's heal. And I remember coming out of like the vocal booth area and we just all hugged. And it was just a beautiful moment, like three guys just in the basement hugging, after creating something. And success for me is that even if one person listened to it, even just for me, it was just, I listened to the demo over and over again in the car. And that's how I knew it was different for me. Because I don't really do that with my other music. I'll listen a couple of times and usually by that point, I've heard it so many times I'm over. This one just stuck in my chest and my throat. I knew that something was going to happen. And it's just wild to, I guess, be right about it, but that is success. So all this stuff is just extra. And I'm so glad people are resonating and connecting, but I view success is that if I'm happy with the thing at the end of the day, and it's going to stay that way no matter what happens.
Man, what a story. I appreciate you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I mean, I was inspired and touched by it. So I know that those that are going to watch this back, listen back to this, are really going to be impacted by it and
Thank
impacted by the song. Actually, go ahead and give us a second, like share where they can find you, where they can find the songs. I know we're running short on time, but I want to make sure people get a chance for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Duck, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Dr. Duck Music. And then on Spotify at Dr. Duck, Apple Music, Dr. Duck, Amazon Music, Dr. Duck.
Love it.
Anything that plays music, I'm on there as Dr. Duck. Yeah, come along to the journey if you like to. If you like mental health, if you like music that is pretty, I don't know. I don't really have a style yet. I feel like I'm still playing around with it, but it's music that, like you said, and like I go, it's from the soul for the soul. I'm not somebody who's going to put out a song a week and just make something that's like, I want to make something that means something. Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Yeah,
but that's kind of my style. So yeah, if you're into that kind of stuff, we'd love to have you on board. Reach out and yeah,
that's awesome, man.
pop
Well,
and talk.
I have one more, maybe two more questions if we have time.
we
Sure.
we got
All right, awesome, awesome. Because I know you mentioned you had somewhere to be, and I want to be respectful of your time. But
I
man,
appreciate you
I
so
love
much. Thanks.
towards the. You're welcome. I'm so glad again that you took the time to be on the show, and I appreciate it. And
Me too. Can I just say too, like
yeah,
something like this? First of all, it's fun talking to another redhead. It's fun talking to another guy. It's fun talking to somebody else who gives really gives a shit about meaningful things and important things because there's so much nonsense I feel like out there to kind of distract everybody from like really the what's important, and I love stupid stuff. I love silly stuff. I love comedy. I love
yeah,
so many different things, but like we need to take time to have
exactly.
shows like yours and to listen to shows like yours because,
Appreciate it.
you know, at the end of the day, it's all fun and games until you need it. Yeah.
Seriously.
Right. And getting on that path where you have access to it and can listen to conversations like you have with so many of the other guests that you've had on here, which I've checked out and I love, I think is really important. So thank you for doing this. Seriously.
Sure, I appreciate your kind words. They mean a
Yeah.
lot because you know what it is. You know how it is when you put anything out to the world. It can be a very scary thing. So anytime anyone ever feels like they're impacted by what I'm doing, then I feel like that's like you said, like with your song, that's the success right there. But man, I love to kind of close out with this question specifically. So let's picture that you're 95, 100, however long you plan on living,
Sounds
and
good.
you're towards the end of your life. You're surrounded by all the people that you love. What do you want to be remembered for?
Cool. That's a great question. I want to be remembered as somebody who cared
Mm,
about people, about, yeah, I just want to be remembered as somebody who cared, somebody who showed up.
I love I
That's
love
it.
that so much, and I think it's so important. And even just a little bit of our time together, I can already tell you are someone that cares. You're someone that wants to impact lives for the better, to create a space for men to be vulnerable and real,
Yeah.
and get the healing that they need. And keep doing that. I appreciate what you're doing. But before we wrap up, I love to even close with this question. This is the final question that I have, and it's: do you have any other questions for me? I like to flip it on my guest.
Oh, dude, I want to like buy you a drink and go, and just go crazy. It's not,
I love it.
I love this so much. And I feel like I could talk to you all day. I do have a question for you. What made you want to start doing this show?
Oh man, I love that question. So honestly, this show started 2018 as a solo podcast, and it was inspired actually by my pastor. She my pastor's husband and wife, pastors, they're basically like spiritual parents for me. But I was sitting at a Anytime Fitness working out before going to the job that I worked for in the YouTube. So I was around this idea of like being a content creator. And I was at the end of my 10-year rap career kind of thing, like not realizing that's where I was at. But I got
Right.
this text from my pastor, and it was a link to a podcast. Lewis Howes has a podcast, School of Greatness, but he has these little like 5-minute blurps of like motivation. It's called like
Mm,
5 Minute Friday. And my pastor just like was like, I feel like you could do something like this. I feel like it's something that you should try. And I was like, you know what? Sure, I'll try it. So I came up with Motivational Mondays, and I spent like 5, 10 minutes And like for me, I'm a believer in God. I'm a Christian. So like I tied it to like what I've just learned from being a Christian, being a Christ follower. So it had that element. But again, it was motivational, encouraging, inspiring. And it started there. And of course, through time, life happens. I put it down for a season. I picked it back up. I actually ended up starting doing mindset coaching and consulting for creatives. And that's what I've been doing for a couple years now. But through that, I was a guest on another coach's show. And he was like, you should interview creatives. That would be cool. So it's so funny because it's like spurred out of this like kind of communal thing. And like, it's been such a joy for me to interview others. Like, I love the idea of doing the solo pods here now and then. I actually did 2 in a row these past 2 weeks, which was blank
Yeah.
different. But man, there's just something about meeting creative-minded people that really wanna make a difference. Because I mean, like, there's just something beautiful about that community, like you mentioned. And that's kinda where this started, and ultimately, I feel like having conversations, real conversations that aren't, like, super edited. Because again, like, I came from the space of it was very polished, very, like, thought down, be and it's important to be intentional with your words, but there's
Yeah.
something that comes from this flow of this, like, back and forth, and it's made me come alive, and I know that it's helped others with through what I've seen, and that's just kinda where it started. But yeah, man, like, it's been such a fun ride just interviewing people and just seeing how it's inspired people. And I mean, I'm reaching out, like, I'm shooting my shot. I'm reaching out to random people
Go for
I
it.
don't even know that just seem like they connect, and, like, sure enough, the stars have aligned. I feel like God's in this for sure, and He's definitely put the right people in front of me where it's
Yeah.
just been connections where they're inspired, I'm inspired, we're all growing from it, and that's just where it's been. But man, I appreciate that question so much.
Beautiful. You know what? And I noticed something. Of course, we know what started that whole thing?
What?
Encouragement from another guy.
Yeah,
That is so important. I
exactly.
think just guys don't really get encouraged, I don't think as much, especially from other guys.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, speaking like, as guys, I feel like we do have a responsibility to a certain degree to lift each other up.
yeah,
And that it looks like that's exactly what happened in your case. You were kind of in the middle ground of and someone said, you know what, you'd be so good at that.
yeah,
Maybe you should try that, right? And you're like, yeah. And look at you now. It's
man.
beautiful.
It's so cool. It's so cool how that works. But yeah, I agree completely. I'm so glad that we can create this space where men can encourage men. And if I could even wrap up our conversation today, that would be another practical thing I would tell the people listening at home is like, I want to challenge you. Like, who's a brother, or I mean, even if you're a female watching this, you can encourage someone as well. But think about today, who can you encourage? But not only encourage them with something like topical or like very broad. Be super specific. That's one thing that I've been encouraged by myself as another guy that I'm connected with that was on the show. He mentioned it. Frank is his name, Coach Frank. If you want to go watch that episode, I'll put a button or something like that.
Shout
Shameless
out, Frank.
promotion of another podcast. And yeah, shout out to Frank. He's doing a great thing in his space. But he mentioned complimenting people and being specific because we're so
Mhm.
specific on their critiques. Like we're in this creative space. When you send out a song to get some feedback, you're gonna get
Ah,
all the specific things of what's wrong. And
yeah.
you might get overall, it was nice. It was well rounded. It was, very vague. But what if you got super specific? Like I love that. Like I play drums for my worship team. And
Nice.
one of my favorite things to do is compliment other people on the team, on the band, and be like, "Man, buddy, that solo you played, that guitar solo you played changed my life." Being able to be a part of that, like, because it really does, like, shout out to Buddy. Another shout out. This older guy that plays for our church, and he
That's
straight
awesome.
rips.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh,
"Man,
dude.
you hear from God and you play so well." But every time he plays, I'm like, "Dude, that's it." But it's like,
That's awesome.
how much more of an impact does that make? Opposed to like, "Man, sounded great today, guys." So
Yeah.
if I could ever leave the podcast with that, then that's for sure what I would wanna encourage you at home is how can you specifically compliment, encourage somebody today, and go do it. And then
That's
last, of course, you'll see the bumper on on the end after we close when you're watching is You go like, subscribe, share it with somebody, build this community because it's so
Yes.
much bigger than just me trying to grow a brand or be successful and make a bunch of money. Like, yeah, that's great, and that's gonna be a byproduct of the impact I make, but man, it's so important. This right here, and I'm
Ye
so grateful for
Yeah,
the
and the
acknowledgement for it.
intention behind it, just as you said, you know, focus on the yeah, your intention counts, and it's coming across clear as day to me, and so I'm in it. Let's grow this thing.
I love it, man. So, final thoughts before we wrap up. You got any one-liners, anything for the people listening, watching at home?
Any one-liner? Oh my god, I don't wanna get myself in trouble, so I'll do a 6th grade one-liner. This is so dumb. I'm so sorry, everyone listening in advance. Listen, "Mommy, mommy, may I please lick the bowl?" "No, you have to flush like everybody else." I'm so sorry.
Mm,
Oh.
that's great. I have a 2.5-year-old that's learning to potty train, so I resonate with that one well.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I don't know why I said that. I'm s
no,
No,
it's
we're good.
great. I love it. Man, Zach, Dr. Duck, I appreciate you so much for taking time on my show. Thank you so much for watching and listening today. Let's stay connected. You can either click on the video or click that little subscribe button so we can stay connected. And also be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at coach.redwallace to get more consistent encouragement and motivation to live your better than best life.